Hi, this is Roberto and welcome. This is Riffing Off My Life. Welcome to episode 5. In this video series, I'll read select entries from my dream journal and also the stories and poems that came out of them. Starting with one story and a poem today. I'm not the most consistent at daily journaling, but around 16 years or so ago, I did start keeping one that helped me get into a journaling routine when I had such a vivid and disturbing dream that it stayed with me on waking up. Usually, details from my dreams fade within 5 minutes of waking up, such that I don't write them down, and I'll forget the whole thing entirely. These days, I just document the dreams that linger past 10 minutes when I get up. After jotting down the main events of a dream, I can usually fill in the gaps, and sometimes I embellish because this is an exercise of the imagination after all. If you've never kept a dream journal or even a regular journal, writing down your dreams is an excellent way to document the way your brain processes your life at the end of each day. It can provide you with an almost limitless well of ideas from which to draw your next stories or poems. I sometimes keep an old notebook on my nightstand and a flashlight looped to my bedpost for such a time as when a really memorable dream wakes me up. Nowadays, I just open a notepad app on my phone and record the important sections of the dream, the ones that resonate with me for some reason. Here are some examples of dream entries that I entered from 2010 towards the year's end, working backwards to the very first entry in it. 12/1/10. Last night I dreamed of solidity, something solid. Or was it the persistence of vision? Did violence creep in? It's a wall of non-recall. 11:30:10. Can't really recall what I dreamed last night, but I think that it had to do with flying. 11:29:10. Woke up around 2 a.m. from a loud noise. Was it dream or reality that made me think of an explosion? At the back of my mind, I was half expecting a flash of light to follow. Although my rational side did not think so, my irrational side considered getting up and hauling everybody downstairs. I took the above entry and reworked it as a short poem titled Split Decision, and later submitted it to Deluge Journal. Here is the poem, Split Decision, which I revised 12/14/20. Woke to loud noise. Whether dream or reality, who knows? An explosion at the back of my mind, half expecting the flash of light to follow. One thought, not. The other considered hauling everybody downstairs. End. For my first story, I was inspired by this journal entry from 2/11/12. Here's a brief excerpt from the journal entry. I later rewrote that long journal entry into the following story written back on 7/31/2012. I call it The Breakfast Plate. Every time he thought of his trip to New York, the smell of scrambled eggs flooded his sense memory. It was a smell that triggered a recollection of early mornings from long ago, of sitting quietly in the kitchen and looking at his mother's back while she cooked for whatever man spent the night with her. Memories of her were hard to come by, so he cherished them all. She had died when he was only 7. With no father to claim him, he fell under the care of indifferent relatives and later under the state foster care system. Those who heard his story marveled that he made it to adulthood relatively intact. He could not believe it himself, yet here he was, pretty much writing his own ticket. A self-made man. Initially, he planned to catch the red-eye to the city in time for a shoot before lunch. But by moving a meeting here and a studio session there, he freed up his afternoon so that he could catch an evening flight instead of an early morning one. Of course, he had to cancel dinner plans with his girlfriend, but she'd been the one who suggested in the first place. A few nights earlier, she'd been concerned about him not getting a full night's rest. She said it would be fine if they had dinner the following week. He never slept well on planes, so he gratefully took her up on the suggestion. On the morning of the flight, he'd been rummaging in the kitchen for a small frying pan, but she was already up and made him sit. It was her turn to cook breakfast, and she promised to make him his favorite eggs, unadorned except for salt and pepper. She poured him coffee, but he let it grow cold after only a few sips. Staring at her back, he drummed his fingers. She knew what he was thinking, that he was just futzing around. He could already be done with the meal, planning for the trip. Still, she ignored him and went on cooking without comment. She wondered if his impatience was due to being antsy about the trip. Her most common complaint about him was his tendency to be in a hurry all the time. He countered that if you didn't keep pace with life, it would leave you behind. It was hard enough keeping up with the routine of life, never mind the constant distractions. With people going in and out of his studio the whole week, he hadn't had much alone time. In reality, she wasn't just futzing around. She was cooking the eggs the way she always did, efficiently. When he cooked, he always had to relight the burners. He had the habit of turning them down too low when the eggs began firming up, and as a result the flames would sputter out. He began puttering around trying to clean up a non-existent mess, and when she offered to take over, he rebuffed her. When her cat sauntered in from the bedroom, he looked at it like it was pond scum. It looked up and winked at him, and he shooed it away. He'd always been tolerant of the cat when he first moved into his girlfriend's apartment. She picked up the cat and set it down in the bedroom and closed the door. It meowed as she turned back to the kitchen. She fought back the urge to scream at him. This would have given him satisfaction. Before he had met her, he was a 28-year-old burnout, living in a condemned building on Nettie Street off San Jose Avenue. A pressure cooker of a career and 5 straight years of hardcore drug use could scramble anyone's recall of names. Just around the corner from the building was a bar where he did his worst self-abuse, pushing his liver to the brink. He also scored weed, acid, almost everything he could get his hands on. Strangely, he never got hooked on anything. A good thing he never tried crystal meth. His girlfriend was the closest thing he had ever had to family. She could be controlling, but was genuinely affectionate, a bottomless cup of love. Recalling their bedroom passion, heat singed his thoughts and other parts of him too. But at times he felt smothered by her and he began to push her away, though not intentionally. She came closest to reminding him of his first love, but he wondered if he had not invented the warmth between him and his mother. Perhaps it had been there once, surely at birth. A memory of her nuzzling his little toe head strengthened this idea. It sustained him until he came of age. Better a false memory than a savage reality. He knew of other children who did not fare well in strange homes, some losing themselves to depravity, some to despair. Benny, a kid he knew through a shared foster home in the East Bay, ran away from his guardians. He was found with a razor and slashed wrists, having bled out in an alley. Benny had started hustling at 12 and got strung out at 17. Unlike Benny, he knew that he was strong. He could endure almost anything, knowing his mythical mom was smiling down on him. His imagination let him survive childhood, fueling growth and creativity. With some help, he learned a craft, photography. But it was his sheer talent that propelled him in the early years. He had only been able to attend 2 years of high school, but those were the best years of his youth. The art teacher had given him a pinhole camera she'd made. The images he captured impressed her, and she wrote to the local community college to consider giving him a scholarship in their art program. Although he only stuck with college for a year or so, his vision was so keen that he soon caught the eye of creative directors. After a few stints as a gopher, he moved up to a steady job photographing food and products for ad agencies. He eventually started his own studio, but success brought temptation and he started crashing and burning. The night he and his girlfriend met, she'd been sobering up for almost a year, but he had briefly fallen off the wagon long enough to have met her. She was leaving the same bar he was entering. He asked her for a light. As she searched through her purse, she had him hold an object that she had in her key hand, something that got in the way of her rooting around for a lighter. He had pocketed and almost forgotten it until she'd been gone 3 hours, and he was ready to call it a night. He took it out and saw that it was a blue address book. Inside was a photo of an older woman, maybe the woman's mother. Feeling obligated to return it, he got a ride or somehow managed to wander far enough away that getting back to the abandoned tenement was going to be an issue. Fortunately, she had written her address on the inside cover. To complicate matters, he was cold and dirty, wearing no jacket and smelling of barf and beer. All the way there, it seemed he kept falling asleep and dreaming the same dream, walking around in soiled underwear. Eventually, he knew he was there in real life. A parade of sorts was passing through, the conclusion to some week-long event from the 70s. There was an all-men's choir singing in gorgeous harmony, all decked out in their 70s flair. He never saw night parades except in the Castro on Halloween, but he wasn't anywhere near there, he thought. He wanted to get away from the crowd, so he walked down a side street that was just north of Guerrero on 16th Street. He noticed a couple of billboards, one of them advertising the product of an iron foundry, a sort of raised, cage-like structure for a person to work and live in, directly over the train tracks of a busy depot. He later passed two people who were discussing the aesthetics of ironworks. One of them, a Hindu woman, remarked something about the oddness of the cage being situated over train tracks. When he finally found her apartment, he wondered if he was still in a dream state. He was barely aware of being in San Francisco. She invited him up after he rang her on the call box, but she never let him inside her place. She was puzzled that he would go so far out of his way to return such a relatively worthless item to her. He could have just called. All the same, she was glad, charmed even. She offered him cab money, but he refused it. He decided to walk off his high. He hoped that she hadn't noticed him acting funny or anything. He decided to walk east along 16th and found a bed-shaped rock on which to rest. It overlooked an empty lot behind one of the taller residential hotels there. Its abundant space reminded him of a stone quarry. Embarrassed at his semi-nudity, he kept to the lesser-known streets, trying to avoid people. He briefly passed an upscale area that had nice restaurants and avoided the stares of the finely dressed patrons. Somehow he made his way down to Mission Street, caught a number 14 bus, and got off at Silver Avenue, wending his way past darkened windows and curious city raccoons. He crossed San Jose Avenue and found his way back to Nettie Street and crashed out on a dirty mattress. Somewhere above him, a semi-crippled bum named Zentea boomed and cursed in the dark. The bum was far worse off, he thought, and he counted his blessings. Miraculously, he and the woman met again 4 months later. He was no longer living in the abandoned building, but was situated in a halfway home in the avenues. After working a stint as a temp, he got a part-time job with an ad agency who hired him on the spot when he brought his portfolio in. Even though he'd been out of it for almost 2 years, he still had name recognition, and his work spoke for itself. He learned that she was a paralegal at a law firm on Montgomery, yet law wasn't her great passion, although she was good at her job and was compensated well. "You might say I settled. I really wanted to go into theater or maybe art," she mentioned on their first lunch date. She told him she was from Rochester, New York, her last place there on the downtown riverfront. After college, she wanted to start fresh and moved west to Northern California. For some reason, Lake Merritt reminded her of home, so she took an apartment not far from the Oakland Museum. She loved walking the circumference of the lakefront, especially when she came upon the bird sanctuary. It housed injured birds, which made her think of old wounded soldiers. Her dad had been in the Korean conflict and spent his last days liquored up at the Rochester Veterans Club. She told him her name was Carla. He answered that his mother had named him Lee, but he preferred his middle name, Warren. "Why did you leave Oakland? Did you like San Francisco more?" he asked. "No, I got a better job offer." She stubbed out her cigarette, then continued. "I used to live at Park Merced, but the walls are real thin and everyone leaves their shit all over the place. I found an apartment near Dolores Park where you came to return my address book." After this, things moved ahead at a surprisingly fast pace, and they became lovers. He moved in with her, and they settled into a comfortable routine. Warren loved the safety of it, so much so that he wanted to preserve it, the way some people wish they could bottle up the air of a never-ending day. To Warren, Carla was always considerate, the perfect lover, never demanding, always intriguing. He told her often that she meant the world to him. When he pressed her, she clammed up, saying only that she was happy with things just the way they were. Why complicate it? He asked her once, during winter, if she would marry him, bear him a child. She said she'd think about it, but never referred to it thereafter. He did not bring the subject up again. They began fighting about little things and big things, like who left the window open in the bathroom, or how much more one was using up electricity than the other, or what priority one was giving to the relationship. A year later, he dreamed about the night he first met her. Instead of being in San Francisco, he was lost in downtown Rochester near the river. But it turned into Lake Merritt. As he headed towards the water, he inadvertently bumped into the railing. Alarmed that the railing actually budged a little, he dreamed he had a son, a young toddler who kept walking too close to the side of the lake. Warren made him walk closer to Carla. When they got back to her apartment, they no longer had a son, just a cat. Warren began to blame Carla for the loss, wanting to seriously injure her. But she became a stranger, immune to his attack. They drew apart from each other, but met again on a lonely, dark street. He had become disfigured and inhuman. She seemed to recognize him, though expressions of extreme curiosity, disgust, and hostility formed on her face. He turned to look at other people, eating into their souls, turning them into flesh shells. He'd become some sort of semi-invisible creature of horrific power. Such was his ability to disappear at will and seriously hurt people. At this point, he woke up next to tears, barely recalling why he had become so sad. He was still puzzling over the geography of the dream when she brought him his plate of scrambled eggs. She took his cup, emptied it into the sink, and poured him a fresh cup. "Don't let them get cold," she said. The aroma of eggs woke something up in him. For a moment, he hallucinated being back home in the small San Jose apartment where his mother cooked for strange men. It was a curious mix of emotions that he had for her: pity, disdain, and admiration. He arrived in New York at night, feeling alone and tired. He slept a dreamless sleep and arose to first light, barely cognizant of his being in a different city. He called her cell and got her voicemail and then hung up. Around mid-morning, he was at the agency studio, working on autopilot. Not that anyone really noticed. His work always pleased his clients. This shoot was no different. Back at the hotel room, he had packed up his equipment and taken a shower. As he lay on the bed, he replayed the scene he'd had with Carla the previous day. Just a few hours before he left, he'd taken his plate of unfinished cold eggs and dumped them violently into the sink, breaking the plate into shards. A piece of porcelain struck his cheek. "What is your goddamn problem, Warren?" There were also shards in his hands which bled strings of crimson into the sink. He took a moment to remove them before responding to her. "I don't have a problem, but I think you do." "I don't know what you mean by that," she said. "I'll come right out and say it then. Who is this asshole you've been behind my back?" "Are you crazy? I haven't been with anyone. In fact, I haven't had sex in over a month. You're never there for me." "Don't lie to me. I saw you with someone 2 weeks ago. I tried to tell myself it was just somebody you knew from work, but I found this under the bed." He showed her a cell phone and scrolled through the text messages, reading the most recent one out loud. "Who the fuck is Jason?" When he couldn't get her to admit anything, he grabbed her shoulders and shook her, and then he slapped her hard in the face. She shut her mouth tight after that, fighting back tears, a rivulet of blood trickling down when she finally did respond. "Get the fuck out of my place, you bastard." Sleep finally overwhelmed his memory, and he fell asleep in the hotel room around midnight. He caught the first flight out in the morning. When he got back to the apartment, he found that his key didn't fit the lock anymore. There was a note taped to the door. She had his things put in storage under his name. The address was on the note, and he drove out there to pick up what was of some value: a photo of his mother, his camera equipment. The rest he left behind and rode out. On a desolate Nevada highway, 2 state troopers stopped in at a roadside cafe. On the front window was a sign that boasted the best scrambled eggs in the state. They showed a photo to the woman working at the counter, asking if she'd ever seen the person in it before. "I served him breakfast, and then he went on his way." "Do you know which way he was headed?" asked one of the troopers. "He didn't say, but I think he mentioned something about going south, maybe Mexico." "What has he done?" the woman said. "He's wanted for questioning the disappearances of 2 San Francisco residents." After taking down her full statement, they thanked her and were heading out when she said, "I do recall one thing about him. He really loved the breakfast special." The end. Thank you again for your time. If you'd like to share one of your dreams, a dream journal entry, or a story that you wrote about and want to share, drop me a comment below, or head to my community where I may have already posted a thread on this subject. And if you can't find it, let me know and I'll make sure there's a thread for you to write to. The next time I check in, I'll make sure you got everything you need. Thank you so much. Here we must part ways. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your environment and help keep it beautiful. Be at peace and of good faith. Bye. Hi, it's me again, Roberto. Thanks for watching. If you like my content, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Also, click the notification bell so you don't miss any new updates of upcoming material. Thanks. Bye.